Hi everyone and welcome back to Roll for Damage. Today I have with me Sean from Paradise RPG to tell a story about his D&D experiences. Hi Sean,
Hey everybody.
what story do you have for us today?
Okay, well, I've got two stories for you today. The first one I like to talk about because I think it's a really good example of just where not necessarily communication falls apart in a D&D group, but where not having a session zero to really understand what your campaign's going to be, but also like what everyone wants to do in the campaign can just go can really quickly sink something down. Um, so this was my first D&D game ever. I've not been playing D&D for that long, really. I guess now it's been long, but when I first, this was probably what are we in 2020? Yes, of course we're in 2020. This was probably like 2 years ago, I think. Maybe more, a little bit more than that. Maybe 3 years. Yeah, 3 years in 2017. It's my first time playing ever. Me and some friends from grad school had always talked about we want to play D&D. I had never played any tabletop games like this. So we started this game. My friend was going to DM. She had never done it before. She had played here and there. She had more experience than I did for sure. So I was like, go for it. Um, and a lot of what she used to structure that campaign kind of turned into some of my strategies later on. So while this is a story about D&D going awry, a lot of what was foundational there has helped me in my endeavors. But we didn't have a session zero, mainly because we were having a really hard time with our schedules. We were going to roll our stats at session zero, but then it just sort of turned into, all right, here's allocate your stats yourself, and we'll start when we can. So I mean, the game started fine. I mean, mostly it's just that excitement of playing something you've never done before, and you're like, oh, I've never done D&D. This is amazing. This is awesome. I'm in a world. I can do this. I can do that. But then it just started to slowly fall apart because everyone was at the table for different reasons. Like some people wanted to murder hobo, some people wanted to just kind of goof around, some people wanted to try to get into the story. And it started off small, and admittedly, I was definitely like first time player, playing a warlock, but also kind of a rogue. Um, I'm gonna steal things. I'm a little disruptive. And I definitely, had a twinge of murder hoboism in me, but not for like I wasn't killing towns guards. It's
That's
more like,
Rogue and Warlock. There's a whole lot of edge there for you as well.
especially because I was gonna play a rogue, but then someone else had already made their character, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go warlock, but like I'm a rogue who became a warlock. It was an edgy character. My first character was very edgy.
I do feel like everyone in their first character or two is like, I gotta play this edgy character. I've come from somewhere bad. I only do bad
Oh yeah,
things. I'm a loner. And then they get to the party and they're like, oh, we have to work together. This is hard.
yeah, absolutely. Um, and essentially, like the extent of my murder hoboism was like I was playing a very like rambunctious character that was had some edge to them, but they were also just like they were a wild card. Like everyone wants to be chaotic good or chaotic neutral. And I wasn't killing guards, but I'd shoot a bird here and there, a crossbow. Um,
Just okay. Yep. Some light animal torture before going to full fledged psychopathy.
oh God, that's right. That's just what leads into it. Yeah, I mean, we were stranded on an island, and she said a flock of birds fly up, and I'm like, I'm gonna shoot the seagull. We gotta
Okay.
have food. Um, I never played D&D before, and I'm like, we're starting this campaign, and I'm stranded on an island. I'm just gonna do something. Um, I also like to make things happen, so I would just like run. And this is kind of a preface to where things started to fall apart. I would often like to do things that pushed us forward into new story, while other players were kind of just like, "We're here. I'm going to start whittling a flute," and I'm like, that's not what I want to do something.
Mm.
But flash forward maybe quite a few sessions actually. We played for quite a while, uh, and there was a point when a player just sort of started to check out every time we played because I think they just weren't enjoying what we were all doing, or kind of the fact that it wasn't cohesive what we were doing. I mean, throw in a little bit that no one really knew the rules, and while that can be fine to a certain extent when you have something on your character sheet that you use and the group just ignores it essentially,
Mm.
that turns into some dissatisfaction, which can cause someone to kind of check out. Um, Another person was pretty disruptive in a very like using skill checks on other players way,
Okay.
that I think we're all familiar with in some of our early games, where it's overly insight checking their party members, not really knowing how deception works, or persuasion really.
Mm.
Um, particularly my character would like to steal things, but my whole thing was like I like to steal things that don't matter. I don't like to steal like a bunch of gold or steal to sell things. I just steal things that don't matter because that's the character's trauma. Because of course they like to. I can control this space because I know I took this one little thing, and I'm the only one who knows where it is. And that's what his character quirk was. But every single time I did it, this one player insight check. Like, why? Why? I'm not harming the scene. This is just for me. Let me do it. Insight check. And they had really good insight. So they would just like take it out of my hands and put it back. And I'm like, well, this quirk is now gone from my character.
Mm.
And the worst part was they were a rogue. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, this kind of all boils down to like kind of our last session, where it was really like our last session we ever played was really painful, because it reached a point where I was the only one engaging in the story, and like whenever the DM say something, I was the only one who'd be like, oh, like what does that mean, asking questions, doing things. But the other players, they weren't necessarily checked out, but they were just disruptive really into and blocked. She'd talked to me afterwards because we had it was a really rough session where like everyone leaves the person's house and you're like, I don't know if we're ever going to play again.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been
and
there.
I had a long conversation with her afterwards and didn't ever play again. Um, where I was just like, it's not anyone's fault. It's kind of all of our faults, but really none of us were at the table for the same reason, you know. And she said to me, if a lot of times it felt like just me and you were playing. And I was like, yeah, it did feel that way often. And, you know, it's kind of, we had to take that lesson. And I do hope to play D&D with them again in that way. But we'll 100% need to be on the same page about why we're playing that campaign. And that was the big thing. It was like, because like even myself, like I made a very serious character, as I tend to do. But it was a very humorous, lighthearted campaign, um, that didn't really have a lot of space for heavy RP. Um, so I was coming to D&D for completely different reasons than anyone at the table. So that was problem number one. But that's easy for me because I can shift back and be like, um, I can play a lighthearted game. I
Yeah.
don't have to do sad emotional trauma every episode.
Just chill out a little bit. Just sit back. Especially if it's a home game, it's a lot easier just to be like sit back. I've been there before. I think everyone has. Where you said like you said, you end a session, you're just like, oh, that wasn't fun, and then everyone kind of just comes to the conclusion not to play again. Do you mind me asking what the event in that session was that kind of caused the split of the party?
Yeah, a lot of it was a little things that built up. But I think in that session, because I remember I had a visceral feeling at a point where I like looked at my DM and I was like, "You're not having fun," and like before it was times where I was like, "I'm not having fun in this particular moment," but I can tell you're not having fun right now, and that's a big part of this problem. And the particular moment I think was there was a real breakdown where I had a moment where I was like, I just need to say like there are rules in this game, and I know that we like to play light with the rules, but like if I use detect magic, like I expect detect magic to do at least detect magic, and to not have it be really random. Because I felt like a lot of times we would do something and it was very much like DM determined the outcome entirely, devoid of the rules, which is technically how it's supposed to be. But you reach a point where like, well, it says this here though. The spell says this,
Yeah.
and that's what broke me in that moment where I felt like I don't really, if this part doesn't change, I don't want to play anymore, because like what does my character sheet matter then? Um, there was one player that was really disruptive. I think is what really broke it in the end, where it was just sort of hard to keep going because they were disruptive towards other players, but also like metagamed really hard.
Yeah, I've been there as well.
Yeah, and it all bubbled up in this one session where one player said nothing the whole time because they were a druid and they were just like, I'm a cat now, and I'm just a cat for the rest of the session, which was hilarious and started as a joke, but eventually kind of just turned into like, I don't really know what to do here. Another player just made a bad character choice for that game where it was just like, I'm going to become really stoic, but it turned into just I don't talk. And then all of that bubbled up into that one session where she had a really intricate dungeon planned, and it was really impressive actually. But I was the only one doing anything. I was the only one saying like, "Let's go down this tunnel. Let's try this." And there reached a point where everyone just sort of checked out, and then I reached a point where I kind of checked out. Nothing was happening,
Mm.
and that's where it really bottomed out, where it was just sort of became the DM talking and people not really responding, and then like me kind of bubbling up to respond because I had to, and I wasn't playing my character anymore. I was just talking to her about the game essentially, and at that point we were just like, this is over.
Yeah, it's a shame because, like you said, she had this thing you're really impressed with the dungeon. The story could have been really fun, but the party sometimes can kill it, and it's not even their fault a lot of the time. You know, like I've been there as the DM going, right, I play a serious game. Here is the basic outline of the story. Do you think you have a character that can fit both the my style, the world, and the stories? All these three things. Everyone's like, yeah, no problem. And I go, cool. What do you want out of this game? And they tell you, you go, I can or cannot provide that. And you get these players after going through that process, and they sit there, and then they just don't do that thing, and you're sitting there going, I, I don't understand. We had a discussion for hours and you still showed up doing this. So session zero is super important, and also
Yeah,
being able to be like, look, we are friends, I'd like to remain so, you can't play with us anymore because because yeah, you know, you said you're all very new, but it might have saved that table to be like, hey, disruptive player, you are really disruptive, and sorry, but could you step aside? We can't play.
yeah,
It's cool. I've seen friendships break over deer. It's one of those things where like people get
yeah,
really like proud and possessive and like over their style of role play, and they just don't work well with one other person. They're like, guys, you're friends. Just chill out. It's fine. It's just a game.
yeah.
But yeah,
It,
it's crazy.
it's really unfortunate because, you know, and the funny thing is, and this game started off so good in the beginning. Like our first session was amazing. Like I, as a new player, I was like, this is so much. This is my new obsession, and it truly became my new obsession. So much so that I was like, I must DM now, and I must do this. And I, you know, that's I'm glad, even though the campaign ended badly, we're all still friends. We're all still very good friends, thankfully. And we all plan to maybe play D&D again in the future, just with a different expectation. Um, it did lead me to make my home campaign, which led to me and Shannon, even though we were friends in high school, and I'm what her husband's best friends. We really became very close because of D&D, and all of this came from it. So while it was a sour, end to that game, it led to all of these beautiful things that I can't be more appreciative of. That unfortunately it ended poorly, but it turned into something beautiful. And I played with them in different settings. Like after I started DMing, I actually DM'd a one shot with them, and it was better. I think a little bit of it was that I had very swiftly learned how to manage a table. When we started playing, it was like kids who found the fireworks in the garage, and we were just sort of like, "What's a session 0? I've never even heard of that. We don't even call these sessions." We had no idea. Half of us hadn't read a single page of the player's handbook. We were just flying at the seat of our pants, and it hit us in the end. But a lot came out of it.
That's good. At least at the end, like you said, you learn something, and you know what to do, and you remain friends. So you did a lot better than a lot of other groups. Thanks for.
For sure.
Thanks for sharing that story. It was really, really good one, actually, and a good lesson, hopefully, for our prospective DMs listening. Do your session 0s. They are important, please. Yeah. All right.
Gotta do them. All right.
Thank you very much, Sean, for coming in and telling us your story. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please. Make that algorithm love us some more. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.